and welcome to another episode of the IAMKAYPEE podcast. Today's guest is a man with a very enviable life, and that is Johnny FD. Hello.
Hey, good to see you. Good to be on the show.
I've been listening to your podcast for the last 4 or 5 years. I can see you now. There we go.
Yeah.
I still don't know whether it's Thailand or not. So
It's Thailand. Yeah.
So I've been listening to your show for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's totally changed my perspective on the world, especially when it comes to being your own boss, which is probably one of your mottos, so to speak.
Actually, that's funny. So my podcast, Travel Like a Boss, I was trying to think of a motto for it. And it was, I was trying to think of something that rhymed, but also really showed the movement of what we're trying to get across. And it ended up being, if you want to travel like a boss, you have to be your own boss. So start your online business today.
And it works. When you see that, you're like, well, that makes so much sense. I want to be my own boss, so why not? Before we get into all of that, how did this all start for you, though? Like, what was your situation before you went to Thailand?
Yeah, actually, I actually had a pretty good situation. I lived in California. I had a good job. And I think the reason why I made such a big move to Thailand was because I was already in the best city in the US. So if I grew up in a small town somewhere like Wisconsin, my dream would be to move to California. Yeah. But since I was already there and I realized, hey, I have everything that I should have. I have a good job. I have a nice car. I'm going out to clubs every weekend and spending, like hanging out with good looking girls, wearing cool clothes. And if I'm still not happy, if there's still something really missing, maybe none of that actually matters. So when I went to Thailand just on a vacation, it was, 2.5 or 3 weeks. And I realized, man, this is what happiness is. This is what it's really all about. And I said, you know what? Let's give this a shot.
And you weren't an entrepreneur at that point, and a lot of people, there is a question around entrepreneurship and whether there is an entrepreneur gene. So a lot of people think they come from the background of having an entrepreneur family, and was that not something that you were a part of?
It's funny. My parents were kind of entrepreneurs. They started a restaurant, and it failed when I was pretty young. And then they tried again, and they opened like a karaoke bar with a partner, and it actually did pretty well. But the partner was a psychopath and screwed them over. So then we ended up broke again. So I grew up with 2 failed businesses. And, just seeing that never made me want to start a business. And luckily, I never did start a physical business because I probably would have hated it.
Yeah.
But I think there always was a little bit of entrepreneurship in me. I remember when I used to play Magic the Gathering cards, I would figure out ways to sell it in middle school to other kids, make some money from that. I don't even remember what else there was. I mean, it was a lot of little things like that.
It's kind of like the geeky version of selling cigarettes at high school, trying to make a business and hustling.
Yeah, definitely. And I always liked it.
Yeah. But
I guess I never really thought I can make a career out of it, or I can live a normal, solid life, because, I had a pretty good job. I was making $48,000 a year, and, I went to university. So I didn't think that would ever be replaced. But what I had realized is that I didn't need to make $48,000 to be happy in Thailand.
Yeah.
You can literally make $12,000 and you can live, a much better life here than you would have back in cold UK or even foggy, cold San Francisco, which a lot of people don't realize has very similar weather.
And it's a big risk to come all the way from America to a place like Thailand. Was it a culture shock for you? Was it something that well, you must have liked it, because you stayed. But was there a difference when we got there?
Yeah, it was completely different. I mean, Americans don't travel that much in general, so when I first came, it was a complete 180 from my normal life, but I was happy. I remember I was wearing shorts, a $2 T-shirt I bought, and some flip flops, pretty much the whole 2 or 3 weeks I was here. And I was like, man, I don't need all that stuff. I don't need the car. I don't need the fancy clothes. I don't need to buy all the stuff to, fill my life or to impress others. This is happiness. And if I can have it now, like, why wouldn't we?
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. There's a lot of people in this world that their life is weighed down by those things. And I think it takes maybe something like that's a drastic move to be able to realize that you don't need those things. You're in a country where people don't have those things. And you're someone who's coming from America where you do have some money, and you can make that decision to then just throw all that aside and be genuinely happy.
Yeah, well, what's crazy is I didn't have any money at the time. I mean, I was like making pretty good money, but I didn't have anything left over. I didn't have any savings. I pretty much spent all my money to go to Thailand.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is my one chance to go to Thailand. I really genuinely thought I would never be able to go back again. So let's do everything possible in these 3 weeks and just get it all out of my system, get massaged 3 times a day, take every single tour there was, go bungee jumping, like, take a Thai cooking class, even though I probably would never cook it again. I just did everything.
And which part of Thailand did you go to originally?
I flew into Bangkok, spent a few days there,
right,
and then went to Phuket. And luckily, I convinced my cousin to even go to Phuket, because he just wanted to stay around the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, we have to go to the islands, And turns out, Phuket's a super touristy island, but at least it was, a huge change of pace. And if it wasn't for going to Phuket, I never would have discovered scuba diving.
Yeah.
Which then became the big primary reason why I moved to Thailand, and also my source of income for the next couple of years.
And I think was it your blog that you detailed all this sort of stuff where, you went to Thailand without any money, not really much of an idea of what you were going to do when you got there either, and then you just started being happy but not earning, a lot.
Yeah, I definitely wrote it, all kind of just random throughout my blog, johnnyfd.com. But really, the whole story is told in my book, 12 Weeks in Thailand. I'm sure you guys can find it on amazon.co.uk or wherever you guys hang out. But I'm so glad I wrote it because, to be honest, I wouldn't write that book again today. I mean, first off, like the thought of living as cheap as possible for $600 a month and living, in like a small studio shack or on a beach hut, and waking up every morning at 6 a.m. to go scuba diving, even though that was my dream when I first moved to Thailand, I honestly don't want to do that today. But I'm so happy that I put it all down in a book, because I know there's a lot of people out there who want to make that first jump, and they don't want to, spend all day in front of a laptop as a digital nomad and build a business, make money. They're like, I just want to sit on a beach and have a beer at sunset every day.
Do you think that's the first step for a lot of digital entrepreneurs, is to do something like that? Or do most people jump to actually starting their business first and then traveling?
I've now met hundreds of nomads who came through Chiang Mai, and I've noticed that all of them have the same kind of mentality where, they're afraid, and justifiably so, because you move somewhere new, and even though you can technically float yourself, with just your savings for 6 months. Or there was a guy yesterday. We have a coffee meetup every Friday for the Nomad Coffee Club, and we were talking about fears and what's holding us back, and he said that he's afraid that he's going to run out of money and he's going to have to go back to his life. And the question, the next question was, when'd you get here? And he said 2 days ago. And he says, okay, well, and how much, do you have saved up? How long can it last you? And he said, about 2 years. And I just thought, like, come on, man, give yourself a break. You just arrived and you have 2 years worth of savings. Chill out. Like, why are you in a rush? But I understand, because I was in his shoes, and that's why I'm so happy I wrote about it in the book, because, I technically had a year's, or at least 6 months worth of, I don't want to call it savings, because I didn't actually have any money. What it was is I went back to the US after this vacation, or after that first vacation, and I sold my car. You know, and I sold all my clothes. I sold my blender. I sold.
It's getting real when you sell your blender.
Yeah, I literally like got rid of all my furniture, and I guarantee most of you, listening, even if you don't have any savings, if you really wanted to just give it your all, and I bet you if you just sold everything you owned, you'd have enough to float yourself for 6 months in Thailand, because it's not very expensive.
Yeah, I think this is something that everyone, even mostly in the Western world, this is their fear, is money. But would you rather be happy and be in the same situation, or have lots of money and just be miserable, be in front of your computer in your desk job? This is the big question, and it's taking that jump, and it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say I'm 100% happier today than I was at my desk job, or even after I quit, and I tried to just kind of live an alternative life in the U.S., but I was still being weighed down by responsibilities, by a high monthly rent, and car payments and insurance and all that stuff. I think I needed a hard reset. I think if it wasn't for starting completely clean, I think it would have been really hard to start a new life or move forward. And I think that's why a lot of people either never get started, or they ultimately just never really give it their all.
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of see it like you're born into the situation you're born into, and you're having to deal with the bills and being in the place that you're from. So almost it's when you go somewhere else, it is your choice. You're choosing where you're going and how you're going to make a step forward.
Yeah. And, so I guess, people don't really know, like a lot of your listeners aren't going to know who I am. Basically, I was just some guy that grew up in California. And I think the only reason why, so many people follow my blog and my podcast and my videos today is just because I've been sharing everything that I've done, pretty much ever since there was, it wasn't even blogging back then. It was called a Zanga, and I don't think they're still around.
What the hell's a Zanga?
It was, it was basically a way you can write a blog, but you couldn't even upload photos. You had to upload photos somewhere else, and then you had to like link it over. It was such a pain.
Like Photo Bucket? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
that was a place that people used to upload.
Yeah, you'd literally, like, if you want to put a photo into my Zanga blog, I'd have to go to Photo Bucket, upload a photo there, get the BB code, go back to my Zanga, put it in there, and then just hope like it didn't disappear one day.
Yeah.
Which they all did eventually, because Photo Bucket just either changed their links or shut down.
I've tried to go look at my old photos from back then when I used to be a complete metalhead. And they're not there, fortunately, so no one can see how awful I looked at that point.
I mean, if anything, I'm glad most of my my like crap I wrote was gone, because a lot of it is embarrassing. I was just some dumb kid. I went to college thinking I knew everything and thinking I was cool because I had a blog. So I'd write about like, college life, trying to, I'd write about picking up girls. I'd write about, kind of like even being, like being an Asian American growing up, and all the struggles there.
Yeah.
And it's funny because looking back, none of that matters.
No.
And maybe none of it actually did matter, but I probably needed to have gone through it.
Yeah.
To discover that,
but
to be who I am today.
You need those internal struggles to be able to push yourself. That you've done that because of what you went through, and you've got to the place you are now.
And I think that's why I openly share as much as I do. I mean, I literally share, my income reports, exactly how much I make, from what sources, probably for the last 2.5 or 3 years now. I'll like every month I talk about both the ups and downs. Like, I talk about, like when I have problems, with my weight or my confidence or just whatever's happening in my life, my relationships. I've always kind of been open about it. And sometimes it's hard, because people know everything about you.
No, true.
But I think I share because I don't want people to have to go through the same crap that I've been through. And I realize that, sometimes you kind of have to anyways, but if I can do my part and I can just put the information out there and say, like, look, you could touch the stove if you want, but I'm telling you, it's hot. I've been through it, and this is what happened. Then it's really up to you.
You're since the 4 years I've been following you, you're definitely one of the more personable digital nomads I've seen. You know, there are a lot of people out there doing the same thing, but there's just I don't know, there's not that connection in the way there is with you, you know, because you are so open with what's going on in your life, and there's a lot of a tendency for entrepreneurs to sort of separate that part of their life from what they're trying to project as well. And I think because you're showing the ups and downs, people can connect a lot better to that.
Yeah, actually, you know, I'm curious. How did you start finding? Like, how did you find my stuff originally?
I think this is probably through some crafty on your behalf, but I did search digital nomad originally, and you're always the first person that comes up. You seem to be the face of being the digital nomad back then, and I was at a point in my life where I was fed up working for other people, and I just wanted to take my own sort of work into my own hands and be able to travel and live off my laptop. And I guess there's a lot of people that come to you and with their stories just by searching those words, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more bloggers now, you know, that talk about it, but I was definitely one of the first to openly talk about being a digital nomad, especially in Chiang Mai. And I think it's, you know, I mean, I guess technically I've been traveling since 2008, so it's been like 10 years and I've been blogging about it, you know. But I mean, the first 4 years, I honestly wasn't making any money.
Yeah.
I was just doing like the first half of the 4 work week where, you know, I got the freedom. I got to retire early in a sense where I got to just, you know, work at a dive resort and do what I loved all day. And I think that, you know, kind of going back to what we mentioned earlier, I think that if someone knows what their passion is, you know, knows they want to scuba dive or they want to do Muay Thai or they want to do yoga or, you know, whatever it is, just do that for as long as you can, you know, make a small living from it, just, you know, so you don't go broke, and enjoy the crap out of it, you know.
It's about
it's
about being happy, and that's the basis of life.
And I can honestly say I was so happy during those, you know, first couple, you know, at least 3 years. It was, I think, like in those 3 years, I went scuba diving, you know, probably 800 times. Mm-hmm. And that would have cost me so much money if I like did it, you know, as a tourist. But it was actually an old British guy that made me realize I don't want to do this forever.
Right.
And I think it was actually more than one old British guy. I think there was a few of them, pretty much at every dive resort I worked at, and I would change spots every, you know, 3 to 6 months just because you can see different dive sites. So, you know, I've worked in Koh Tao and Phuket and Koh Lanta, you know, all over Thailand, you know, all as far as the Caribbeans. I worked in Borneo, which is kind of like in Malaysia.
Yeah.
You know, and I got to dive at, you know, 10 plus different dive resorts, and there was always one old British guy, and he was, you know, and they're basically like, I'm just gonna call it one person because they're all the same. They were grumpy, and they were just always so negative. And I would like say like what is your problem? Like, you're living the life. You're working at a dive resort. You're on this beautiful island. It's sunny. You know, you got to see all this cool fish. You have all these international people, you know, like coming every day, and we don't have any responsibilities. You know, we just go diving, and then we're back by 5 p.m. We're having a beer, watching the most beautiful sunset you've ever seen, and then, you know, your students or the people you took out are buying you beers at night. Yeah. What is your problem? And I realized what it was is they loved it in the beginning.
Yeah.
And now they're stuck.
Yeah.
You know, now, you know, they've been doing it for so long that it's not exciting anymore. And, you know, even though they might like the diving, it's a job. Yeah. You know, they have to wake up early, set up people's gear, you know, deal with kind of that stuff, that part of it.
Yeah.
And I think as you get older, you know, you kind of realize, hey, you know, it's like, if this is, I can't do this forever, but this is it. This is my one skill now.
Yeah. And when you have to be beholden to other people, that can put a lot of pressure on you and make you unhappy.
Yeah, and I mean, whatever it was, I realized I have to quit while I'm ahead.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you're a gambler, you know, and you know you've hit the jackpot, just stop gambling. Just cash out, do something else.
I don't do a lot
So
of
that yeah
gambling myself.
yeah.
Um,
There you go.
so what was the point, the sort of nexus point for you where you started to realize, or someone may have mentioned to you, or a book that you read, and you were like, oh, this is how I want to live my life. What was the start of your sort of digital nomad lifestyle?
I mean, it was definitely when I read 4 Hour Work Week. Unfortunately, it took me 4 years to get to the second half.
I don't think that's in the book.
Yeah, but honestly, like it doesn't even matter because I'd rather have. I'm glad I spent 4 years, just living the first part of the book and just enjoying the freedom of living cheaply, living in another country, because I didn't need any money back then.
No.
Like I just needed enough to get by, to have Thai food, to pay rent for my little hut, which was literally $150 a month.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's all I needed. It wasn't until I turned 30 and I realized, okay, I'm not gonna do this forever. I don't want to be the old grumpy British dude. I want to have some options. I think a part of it was I met a guy in Chiang Mai who, we were friends and everything was good, and then he said, "Hey, I'm gonna go to Europe next month," and I said, "Oh, why?" And he basically just said, "Oh, because Europe's nice in the summer." And I thought about it for a second. And I was like, "Yeah, it is nice in the summer," but and I gave myself a bunch of excuses why I didn't want to go, and I realized it's because I can't afford to go.
Yeah.
I was able to live as cheap as possible in Thailand. At that time I was making a couple $100 a month from my first book, 12 Weeks in Thailand, but I realized I can only afford to live here. I can't afford a plane ticket to go somewhere else. I can't afford, the higher costs of a place like Europe. And I was kind of stuck. And that's when I realized, okay, the next level is I have to make enough money to not only live cheaply in Thailand, but also to be able to afford to go, have some scotch in Scotland, or,
Might not want to do that. I think it's easy just to assume sometimes that people know what you mean when you say a digital nomad. Could you sort of just describe what you think, or exactly what a digital nomad is, and for the people that don't know, what exactly is that to you?
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, this term started getting popular in 2014. I think the actual, people always kind of find like a mention of something, earlier, but in reality, Chiang Mai is the hub of the movement boom, where it became really popular. And when I got here in 2013, there was no co-working space yet. There were, very small groups of people who were working online, maybe like a handful at the most. And I think it was a year later, Pun Space, the first co-working space, opened up. And even then, there's only like 10 of us.
Yeah.
And then we would have a monthly meetup and try to get everyone from the city to come. And there might be 15 people at the most. And it wasn't until 2014 it started getting a bit more popular, and people started kind of just using that term all the time. And to be honest, we actually didn't like the term, so we tried not to use it, which I kind of regret, because it would have been good for my SEO if I used it more often. But I just even today, I think if you go to johnnyft.com, it probably says digital nomad now, but it says location independent entrepreneur, which is what we prefer to be called.
And that's how you would describe yourself.
Yeah, but you know what? I finally gave in, actually just a few months ago, and I wrote like 8 years later, I wrote a post called "What is a Digital Nomad?"
Right.
And more importantly, I wanted to define what a successful digital nomad is, because there's a lot of people using the term now, kind of like you have a lot of people that call themselves entrepreneur or Instagram CEO, and the they might have, cool travel photos. They might be kind of, they might be in Thailand. They might be traveling while, taking photos with their laptop on the beach. But to be an actual successful digital nomad, actually, I'll just define what a digital nomad is first. So let's break in two parts. Digital just means, using technology, whether it's a laptop or a cell phone or Wi-Fi. A nomad traditionally is a person who roams, from place to place for greener pastures. So, that's why, back in the day, nomads had livestock, and when the pasture would dry up, there's not enough food, for their animals and themselves, they would move their house and kind of their whole livelihoods somewhere else that had more rainfall or more resources. So a digital nomad is simply someone who roams from place to place, normally to a better place, while taking advantage of technology, while working online.
So what you're saying, the grass is always greener on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's always a place that has greener grass, and it doesn't mean everything about it is better or that it'll be better forever. But like, for example, like season wise, in like pretty much right now until February, the grass is literally greener in Chiang Mai because it's the end of rainy season. Everything's lush, the weather is great. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. It's just perfect.
Yeah.
But then in March, the farmers burn on the crops. And
I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, actually, and supposedly it's terrible to be around.
It's really bad, and I've written a lot of blog posts about it. And anyone who says otherwise, I guarantee that they're the type that, that's smoking 20 cigarettes and saying, it's fine, So don't listen to them.
They've all got the black lung. How did the Thai people, how are they able to just stand it? Is it just they're so used to it?
Well, I mean, it's changed a lot. I mean, for a lot of people, they don't have any options. If they're poor, they can't leave, and they're just like, all right, well, I mean, it's not going to kill you today. It might shorten your lifespan by a few years. Actually, a lot of elderly people and a lot of kids actually develop, really bad lung infections from it. So it actually does kill a lot of people, and it's sad.
Yeah.
But it's been kind of their kind of way of life for a long time. So for the poor people, they just can't leave anyway, so they don't have any options. And because it's not immediate, they're not really thinking about it right now.
Right.
They're not in a position where they can worry about what's going to happen in 10 years. When they can't afford to not work or have to move somewhere else. For the richer Thais, there's so many cars on the road now, because even though it's much more convenient to ride a scooter, especially during those months, there's so much pollution that they don't want to breathe it in. So now people are indoors with their AC on. They're driving cars, with their HEPA filters and their AC on. So they don't really notice it that much either. But as foreigners, we love walking. We love being outside. We like being in the park. I mean, that's kind of the reason why we come to Thailand. I didn't come here to be in the AC all day.
That is true, but it's just a shame that it affects the local people like that, But you can't get around it, I guess.
Yeah, and I honestly, like, I've stopped trying to change, their culture, because it's not my place to do it, and it's a losing battle. I mean, like, there's no way I can affect 100 million Thai people. So as long as I'm here, I'm just gonna accept both of the goods, the good and the bad. But as a digital nomad and someone with options, when it's bad here, I just leave.
Yeah.
And that it's okay timing. It's not the best. But March is kind of the beginning of spring in some parts of Europe, like southern Spain or Portugal. So I start making my way there, or I might spend a month down on one of the islands first, or just head somewhere else.
That sounds cool. So you got to the second part of the 4-hour work week. What was your first dipping your toe in the entrepreneurial game? Yeah,
so I don't know if it was from that book or just something from somewhere else, but I remember reading somewhere that you should find people who are more successful than you and pick their brain, right? But I knew that, like, if someone messaged, like, if someone was really successful, like, and you asked them, like, hey, can I buy you a 75-cent cup of coffee, and ask you a million questions, like, they probably wouldn't do it. So what I would do is I would, find people who either had the same interest in entrepreneurship or business, or read the 4-Hour Work Week, and I would say, hey, can I take you to dinner? And luckily, dinner's not that expensive in Thailand, but it's still like, I think people just like free food, so they're a lot more willing to meet up.
Okay.
So I took a bunch of people out to dinner, and I would just ask them questions. Mainly, honestly, I was trying to figure out ways to sell more books.
Okay.
Because that was already making me money, and I realized, hey, 1 month I made $600 the first month, and after that, after pretty much everyone who read my blog, bought the book. So after that, I had to find new buyers, and I was making $200 a month, which was really good for me back then, but it wasn't enough to live in Thailand even. So I would basically just try to figure out, hey, how can I market my book better? How can I learn SEO or copywriting, or what else can I do to sell more books? And I met a ton of people, and I would hear about their business models and what they're doing. And honestly, most of it didn't interest me at the time, until I met one guy named Anton Kraly, who was super smart and super helpful. And he gave me all this great advice on how to sell more books. And maybe the last, 5 minutes of our dinner, I was like, oh, by the way, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I do something called drop shipping, which is basically like, and I think the term's a lot more popular now.
Yeah.
But I had never heard of it. I think I actually Googled it, and I just read the Wikipedia article.
Yeah.
And I think it says something like, drop shipping is a fulfillment model where instead of buying inventory up front and storing it in a warehouse and then shipping it to your customer, you become an authorized dealer, and you have that manufacturer or that dealer send the product directly to the customer.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you guys call it in the UK, but in the US, sometimes you'll see something that says like manufactured direct, or shipped from the factory warehouse or something.
Yeah. And it's a great system as well. And is that that's how you first found out about it, and how were you kind of reluctant to try and do it? Was it scary to you, or were you just in a situation where you had to do it?
Honestly, in the beginning, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, but let me sell more books. So I remember, I don't remember how, like, what it was, but so Anton was in town for like a week, so we were hanging out, and I was at his hotel, and he was showing me something online. I think it was something to do with like marketing or something, where he, to basically show me how I could sell more books. And I kept seeing these notifications pop up on the bottom right of his screen. And it was like, oh, you made a sale, $332. You made a sale, $670. And every like 10 minutes, I would see a pop up.
Wow.
And he will, he completely ignored them. Like they weren't even there. And I like looked at him. I was like, hey, did you just like make $1,000? Like, did you just sell $1,000 worth of something? And he was like, oh, yeah. Wow. And he's like, oh, he's like, oh yeah, and you see like your title here on Amazon, you can change it to this. I'm like, no, wait, I don't care about this book anymore. Like, how are you selling? How'd you sell $1,000 worth of stuff while we're looking at? Actually, I don't even think we were looking at my site at the time. I think we had taken a break to look at cat videos or something stupid, something completely off topic. And my mind was blown, and. I was like, okay, like tell me about this dropshipping thing. And he's like, oh, I actually just created a course. He's like, you can check it out. And
was this at the very beginning of that course?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I was, the first 100th student or the first, 10 students or whatever it was, but it was brand new. It had, I think there was, I remember there was definitely other students in there. I don't remember how many, but this was in like 2013, like right. The first couple of months it was out.
Yeah.
And I remember taking it and just thinking, this all makes sense, and back then his course, like, it wasn't as detailed as it is today. He's added a lot of stuff to it, but it gave me, enough information where I was like, okay, yeah, let me just try this and let me go for it. And it took me 2 months to, go through the course, do all the homework, call the suppliers, build the site, you know, get the ads up and running. And I remember 2 months later, I think it was like 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, I got a sale. And I was so excited. I jumped up and I packed all my stuff. I was in bed already. And I went to the co-working space and I was like, okay, like, what do I do now?
Do you remember what item it was? Well, I don't want to give anything away, but do you remember how much maybe it was, or,
Yeah, I think it was like $400 or something.
Wow, yeah.
So like it was a huge deal for me.
I thought maybe it was like $30 or something, and you're like,
no.
I'm going to buy all the coffees in this co-working space.
What's really cool about Anton's method is he basically teaches like don't sell anything under $300 because first off you're dealing with a bunch of rookies and you have to sell so many products, but also it's just normally either the margins aren't there or the profit's not there.
Yeah.
But in general, it's too much headache for a small amount of money, and if you do it, you're not gonna be able to provide good customer service. So I think a lot of people now, when they hear drop shipping, they think of selling kind of cheap items from China, either off of like AliExpress. And it works. I mean, I know people who make a lot of money from it. But
the way I got introduced to it was David Vu's course, and he does the eBay drop shipping course.
Yeah.
And that was, that's a great way to get your foot into it and to understand the process.
Yeah, actually, I'm really glad that, I interviewed David a few years ago and kind of started introducing my audience to his course, because there was a ton of people that were like following my journey with Anton's course. And they're like, man, I see it working so well for you, but, Anton keeps raising the price of the course. And, to be fair, he's adding a lot more content to it. He's also getting busier. And he wants to be able to help people. So he can't just like, let 1,000 people in at like a low price. He wants to like, be able to provide, service and customer support, but also just like kind of help people, with questions. And his course, like when I got into it, it was $400 or maybe even $300.
Right.
But it was also just like 10 videos.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I don't even know how many, like, 30, 40 videos kind of going into detail with everything, like a lot more help, a lot more like services, but it's also like $1,400 now.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it reflects the content, how much you're paying to be part of that. I think I actually got it. It's through Udemy. Is that?
No. So, Anton's course, if you go to antonmethod.com.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was talking
there.
about David Vu's course. Yeah.
So with David's course, like when I interviewed him, and he, super smart guy, and he has this full blown out course. And I was like, why do you have it on Udemy? Because it's like Udemy has these like, flash sales where it's like $10 or $20 like every other week,
This is how I got his course. It came up on a flash sale, and I was like, there's no way this should be this price. Yeah, it was $20 I think I got it for, and that's insane.
Yeah. And what's really crazy on I think it was the last episode, most recent episode of Travel Like a Boss podcast, I interviewed these two people who bought VIP tickets to the Nomad Summit and didn't even show up until dinner time. And I was like, why did you guys spend $800 on these tickets and not show up? They're like, oh, we just wanted to have dinner with you. Wow. And because I wanted to thank you for introducing me to David's course. We're making $15,000 a month in profit from eBay dropshipping.
That's crazy. And one of the more famous things from that course is you were pretty open about your journey through it. Going from scratch all the way through to your first sale. I think that's one of the things I heard about a lot, was you posting quite about this and everyone sort of following you on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really like a great journey. I mean, I think a lot of it's kind of a little bit hard to find now because my blog has so many articles on it, but I think the easiest way is I wrote a second book called Life Changes Quick. It's also on Amazon. But basically there I like highlighted step by step what I did when I first started, you know, that second part of my journey where I started making money online. You know, how I got introduced to drop shipping and kind of the steps on how I actually became successful with it. Because a lot of it wasn't just following the course. It was a lot of it was mindset.
Right.
You know, a lot of it was like, is this possible? Is this possible for me? You know, and not just that, but even just dedicating the 2 months, because so many like bad things happened during those 2 months. My laptop broke literally while I was building the store and had no income.
I bet it was a Mac.
Well, what's funny is I had a Windows PC. It was a gaming laptop. And it was like pretty new too. It was like a, you know, pretty high spec, you know, Windows gaming laptop. Shit. And then my buddy, he bought the, you know, at the time it was the brand new 2013 MacBook Air, and he's like, "Hey Johnny, you know, like, do you want my old MacBook Pro?" And I was like, no, I got this great gaming laptop. It's, you know, it's awesome. And he's like, no, mate, just try it. You know, just try it. I promise you'll never go back. So I was like, all right. So I tried his, you know, old MacBook Pro that had like the screen was like half falling off. But I remember it was so much better than my Windows machine. Even though it was like 4 years old or 5 years old, it just worked so much faster, so much better, that I sold that Windows laptop and I just started using his full time. The only problem was after a few weeks, the screen completely fell off. Wow. And I had to send it in, you know, to get repaired. It was going to take, you know, a week or two. So I had a broken, like I basically had no laptop, and I had to borrow somebody's like old tablet. It wasn't even an iPad. It was just some like crappy Android tablet. I was trying to build this business on a freaking crap tablet. And it like, then, you know, like then I finally got the laptop back, and I fell through a wooden floor in front of the co-working space. I remember it was super early in the morning. I was the first one there because, you know, I was like, I was really dedicated. Like I would wake up. I think I got there at like, you know, 6:30 or 7 in the morning, and it had rained the night before, so the wooden planks were a bit, you know, dodgy, and I fell through almost to my waist, and I was just thinking like, what else can happen to me? You know, like, and I think if it wasn't for kind of being in a place where I really just was desperate to succeed, I would have, you know, been angry. I would have gave up, you know, but I just said, you know what, screw this. Like, I would just, you know, like I didn't even have money to go to the hospital. I had this cut up leg, and I just went into this, you know, co-working space, you know, wiped it off. It was bloody. Just like, I couldn't really, like, it was really bad. Like I couldn't really walk that much for the next couple of weeks. Wow. And I was like, all right, well, you know, I guess it's good that I live close to the co-working space and I can just work all day.
Did you go to the hospital when you got your first sale?
I think I think it eventually got infected or something. I had to go. It was really bad.
I made my first sale, but unfortunately they have to amputate my leg.
Oh God, man! Like, and you know what? I should probably read my own book again, because it's been so long that I've forgot about all these things. You know, I haven't talked about these things in like 4 years. But I think, you know, everyone will go through things, you know, and everyone's going to have reasons why they can't do it, or it's hard for them, you know, and I guarantee you it's not just you. It's hard for everybody. But I also can guarantee that it's so worth it at the end.
When you start to take on something like this, when you're trying to change your life with something and you're focusing on it, it can seem like the world's against you. Like you say, you fell through a wooden floor and your laptop, you know, crashed. These things feel like they're testing you, but these are just the hardships. And like you say, when you make it, it's all that much better.
Yeah, I really think so.
If it was easy, then everyone would do it.
Yeah, and if it was easy, I don't think you would enjoy it as much.
No.
You know, like now, like when I I look around and I have like a nice, comfortable apartment, it's compared to like kind of some of the shitholes that I've stayed in the past. Like I really appreciate it. I'm really grateful, and like I really enjoy it. Like I wake up every morning just grateful, just looking out the window, like seeing, hearing the birds chirp, seeing like the jungle out here, seeing the mountain, and every morning I'm just like, man, life is so good. I'm so glad I'm not stuck in a job I hate. Back in, even San Francisco, like it's not a bad city. It's a great place, but I'm so glad I'm not stuck in a routine. I'm not paying, bills up my ass where I can't afford to save or travel. I get to live anywhere in the world I want to live. I get to work where I want to work, and I can do all of this, online from a laptop. And I think this is something that people don't really realize how nice that is, like until you sustainably can do it. And I think I alluded to it in the beginning of the talk in the podcast. What the difference between a digital nomad and a successful one? A digital nomad can be technically anyone with a laptop traveling around that says they're a digital nomad. But a successful one is someone who can sustain themselves, who can make enough money, with an online or location independent business where they can afford to, travel and go where they want to go where the grass is greener. And for me, it's spending the winters in Thailand because it's amazing here, up until February. And then going, down in the islands for a month to kind of relax and scuba dive, and then spending the entire summer in Europe. For me, that is how I view, a successful life, and then be able to go home and visit my parents, my family and my friends, every year, back to the US, even though it's a far flight, and then to kind of step it up, to be able to fly business class. So instead of dreading that flight and hating it, I can turn my, my seat into a bed and, sleep for 8 hours and wake up in another country.
I think, I'm not sure if it was Tim Ferriss or you that said something along this lines, but it really stuck with me, and I felt like it's true. But just being able to take care of going out for a meal with a bunch of people and being able to just take care of the whole tab, these are those type of things that make you feel that, and not have to worry about it. That is life. You don't have to worry about going out, having food with your friends, and just being like, I'll take care of this. I mean, it's probably cheaper in Thailand, but anywhere, it's just nice to do those things and feel that you're not going to struggle for the next month because you did that.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was me or Tim that said it, either, but it's cool to be compared to him, right? Because he's the one that changed my life. And a lot of people come up to me and they say the same thing to me, like pretty much every week, when I'm in Chiang Mai, at least, like just there's so many people here who have come because of listening to my podcast or reading my book or reading my blog. And I always ask them, I'm like, like, are you happy? And they were always like, yeah, I'm so freaking happy I came.
And you always take the time to respond as well. I think that's why people respond to you so well, is because you do talk like you're just a normal human being, like everyone else is. And when I first got in contact with you, I think it was like 3 years ago, I sent you an email just about listening to your podcast, and you just immediately replied, and that's a good thing. And for people to see that also is also a great thing. Yeah.
And what's funny is, like, I am just a normal guy. And I think that, like, the people that I meet who are even way more successful than me, like, they're just normal people too. I think what it is like, sometimes it's our own insecurities that make it, so we have to act a certain way in public or online, or, maybe, we get tired of, answering the same question all the time. So then you start becoming a bit of a dick. But
what is a digital nomad?
Yeah. I mean, but I don't know. I think like what I try to do is, every time I get asked this kind of the same question, like more than a few times, I write a blog post about it, and I write it like I would to a friend, and it's funny because even my personal friends, or even like my cousin, like if they ask a question, I will link them to an article on my blog and say like, oh, read this. And I think some people might think that's a dick move, But I guarantee you, whatever I wrote in that blog post is way more detailed and well thought out than any answer I would give you, over the phone or over text message.
And at the same time, your time is money, and the volume of people that must get in contact with you as well. If you answered every single one when it is something that you can answer with a blog post, then it just seems natural to do that because you've thought about it and put it down into words.
Yeah, and honestly, like I don't remember, half the things that I've done in the last, 8 years, or even last, 2 years. So if you ask me something about like how was it to start the dropshipping store the first time, I can try to remember, but it's been 5-6 years. I'm not gonna remember the details, know. But if I can send someone a blog post, or they can read it in a book, that I published 4 years ago, that's going to be the better answer than whatever I can think of now. And actually, one really cool thing about Anton's course is he has a members forum for people who pay for the course, and I started a diary in there. It was called there's a thread called my progress step by step or something, and it was literally, okay, today I watched module 1 video 3 and then I'm like, these are the 7 things that I did. And then the next day I would say okay, I've added the trust seal to the bottom, I added the 800 number to the top, I wrote in this on About Us page, and it is, I want to say it's like 50 pages worth of just details on every step I took and every mistake I made. And I think if nothing else, when people would kind of go through that, they can see oh, I'm not gonna make that same mistake, or they can also see, oh, Johnny made a bunch of mistakes and he is still successful, so I'm not gonna be too hard on myself.
Do you think that forum format is good? Do you think it keeps you sort of it shows that you're sort of all contributing to each other's success in those forums? You're all helping each other. If you tried to do it by yourself, would you think it would be a lot harder?
Yeah, I absolutely think so, because everybody gets stuck, and if you don't have a support network, you can just give up. And it's pretty easy to give up if you just if you get frustrated and you're like, oh, I can't find the answer. But if someone else has been through it, and I almost guarantee you someone else has been through whatever problem you've had, you come across, and somebody can answer it and show you what they did to get over it, then you're like, oh, okay, and then you're gonna want to pass that knowledge down to the next person. So unfortunately, it really only works in paid courses or paid forums, because whenever you have a free public forum, or especially anonymous place like Reddit or something, people, I don't know, people aren't as invested. People don't really care about their community members. They're just they either don't know what they're talking about, and they're too cheap to actually learn how to the subject, or they're trolling, or they're or they're idiots,
or
they're
just spamming you. Forum.
Yeah,
people troll.
Well, in public forums, yeah. But in a private members forum, people really treat you like family,
right?
And people take the time to answer questions because they know that you're in the same situation, and that you're invested, that you paid for a course, and that you're a real person.
Just since you have started, how much has the digital nomad scene changed?
Oh man, a ton. I mean, just size wise, I remember in Chiang Mai in 2013, there might have been 10 digital nomads at any given time. I mean, maybe there's a few more that I didn't meet, but in general, we would have a meetup or something once a month, and you'd have 10 people. Now, every Friday we have 50, 60 people show up to this coffee shop, and then when we have the Nomad Summit every January, the first year in 2014 or 2015, we had 100 people, and then 200, then 300. Wow. And this most recent one in January 2018, we had 400 people show up. And it's seeing that many digital nomads in one room, especially because none of them are Thai. I think one person was from Thailand.
Wow.
399 people flew from another country, either specifically to come to the Nomad Summit or, to come to Chiang Mai and then, like be part of this community.
Do you think the scene's becoming too convoluted, and is there still room for other people coming through with their businesses?
Well, what's funny is there'll always be room, because it doesn't matter if there's, a million digital nomads, as long as you're not selling to just other digital nomads. Like what I'm
going to start a new course called drop shipping, which is like, a third party.
Well, what's funny is, I mean, like in every business, it's normal to create products for like the people also in your business. So like, for example, even a gym, they'll sell products to, personal trainers, right? Like let's see, like CrossFit, right? They sell plenty of things that are specific to people who do CrossFit, but also like they have CrossFit certifications.
Yeah.
They sell equipment to other CrossFit gyms, so you can create a brand or a product to sell to people in your community, whether it's, CrossFit stuff to other CrossFitters or digital nomad stuff to other nomads. But to be really successful, you have to start looking outside, because there are, 3 billion people you can sell to.
Yeah.
So what I liked about my dropshipping stores is none of my customers are nomads. Like my customers are just normal people buying stuff online in the US. And it's like, and even I would say, like my books, I'm sure a lot of digital nomads read it, but a lot of people who didn't even know what a nomad is, they might find it on Amazon because they're searching about Thailand, or they're searching about goal setting or whatever it is.
I just want to switch it up a gear and actually talk about your experiences traveling. What's been some of your favorite countries that you've traveled to?
I like them all pretty much. I mean, for different reasons, right? I think everywhere you go, you could find something kind of amazing about it. I would say the best scuba diving I've ever had. Actually, it's hard because I like diving everywhere, but
the North Sea is terrible this time of year, supposedly.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of places I wouldn't go dive at all, but like honestly, I didn't dive even in Spain because I was probably not that much to see.
Okay.
And I tried it in Greece because it's like might as well, and it was okay. Like it was, it's always fun, but it wasn't amazing or anything. The best diving was probably in Borneo.
Wow.
On this little island called Sipadan that Jacques Cousteau, he said, I've seen places as beautiful as this, but they no longer exist. They've been gone for 20 or 30 years.
Wow.
And it's sad to me because I know that, when I have kids and they grow up, they're not going to be able to see these things because, the environment's changing so much. So I highly encourage everyone, if you're at all interested in, seeing the underwater world, if you love kind of animals and fish, go diving now because it's not going to get any better, and it's beautiful. Like I've been diving with whale sharks in Thailand. I've seen manta rays in the Komodo Islands. I've dove with in Hawaii, with manta rays at night.
Wow.
Seen sea turtles.
Is that not scary doing a night dive?
Yeah, it's scary, but it's fun. It's exciting.
I guess if you can't see it, then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because most of the fears that we have are the things that don't really exist.
Yeah, true. That wasn't a relevant statement, actually.
Yeah.
Do you get any strange reactions as American traveling around the world?
Yeah, because not that many Americans travel.
Yeah,
like it's weird. Yeah, I mean, I think I never get any negative things. I'm also not wearing like a "Make America Great" again hat or anything. But sometimes I'll wear like American flag board shorts just to be ironic. But I don't know. It's probably also because I'm Asian American that people give me a pass, but I don't think it matters, to be honest. I think if you're just if you're like a nice person, and you're calm, like even if someone initially has prejudices, by talking to you for a few minutes, they'll realize if you're a level-headed normal person and you connect on, there's always something you can connect about.
Do you think your personality would be the way it is now if you had stayed in the US?
No, definitely not, because I was so different when I was in the US. Even going back this time, I realized, like, I was hanging out with some friends, people I know for a long time, and some of the new friends, and I realized when I hang out with them, I can't be myself. I have to. It's not that I have to, but I feel like I need to have the same interests as them, or even start talking like them, or do things that they want to do. Like I've never been into watching sports, but because they were watching it, I ended up watching, football with them.
Right.
And because they, like just what it was never really me,
Yeah.
And I think that's why even accents get so heavy it's a tribal thing where people want to fit in and be the same as others. And it's funny because my accent, I think, if people haven't seen my face and they don't know my backstory, where I'm from, they can never, they're always kind of confused, and they think, oh, maybe it's because he's Asian, but it's not, because I grew up in the U.S. and I hardly speak any other language.
Your accent's quite neutral as well, though. You don't really, you can't really pinpoint where you're from exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas when you hear me, you can tell, like, well, I don't know, maybe you can't tell where I'm from, but it is a hard one to understand.
I think it's only because I won't meet that many Scottish people. But.
Probably. It's a good thing, I'm telling you. So what's a country that you'd love to go to, but you haven't yet?
It's funny because I keep thinking, okay, I've been all the places I wanted to go, or at least the top 10 bucket list places. And then I think the more you travel, the more random places pop up that you're like, oh, that sounds cool. Mm-hmm. So now I want to go to Georgia.
Right. No way.
And and
why would you want to go there?
It's funny because I never even heard of the country until I went to Ukraine, which was already, crazy for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But in Ukraine, it turns out that, like, the places that are really easy for them to travel to are the ones that are really hard for us to travel to.
Right.
Especially because, most of those places speak Russian. And I don't know what it was. I think, first I had Georgian food for my first time when I was in Ukraine, and I fell in love with it. It's just super delicious. Mm-hmm. Just like really nice grilled meats with like creamy garlic sauce and this like amazing bread with cheese baked in it.
Wow.
It's just really good food. They have good Georgian wine as well.
Wow.
And the people I met there, they everyone who went to Georgia would say it was amazing. People are so friendly. The food is so good. It's so cheap. And they would talk about Georgia like people would talk about Thailand.
Right. Okay.
I think, for example, Bali. If you meet someone who went to Bali, they'll either say oh yeah, it was so beautiful. It was I took all these great Instagram photos, or they'll be like, oh man, Bali sucked.
Yeah,
it was dirty and nasty. There's people scamming you, and it sucked. But with Thailand, and with Georgia, everyone I meet is oh yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
There's no big polarizing swings. It's people just love it.
You would never put those two together, that Georgia is a place that people want to go to. Not that it's terrible, but
yeah.
I think
who knows? Could be.
One of the things for me that it's a life goal to do, not necessarily a place, but to take the Trans-Siberian Railway, from all the way from Russia all the way to Beijing. It's an amazing journey.
Yeah, it's funny. My co-host for my other podcast, Invest Like a Boss, he really wants to do that. So maybe you and Sam Mars can get together, because It sounds like to me like one of those things where it can either be really incredible or it can suck, and I can be like, why am I on this train for 30 days?
I think it's mostly just the feeling of traveling and going through countries and just it's like a secret you going through there as well. You're just not really doing much interacting. You're having food and you're just doing it at your own sort of pace. It's so appealing as well. So just to kind of get towards the end of this, what would you say is your top 5 tools for being a digital nomad? Like an app or something along those lines, or software that you use, or even a calendar or something like that. Let's say top 3.
I would say for productivity, I use something called timeout, which is basically just a timer that locks your screen every 30 minutes or whatever you set it to. Mm-hmm. That way, it forces me to stand up and stretch every half an hour.
Right.
I used to, like when I was really crushing it, I would wait, get up and do some push-ups or some burpees even. But more importantly, what it does is when you get back, because you had a moment to, like a minute or two to take a break, you realize you come back and you're like, oh, what have I actually done this last half an hour? Like, was I just on Facebook? Or, if anything, every half an hour you can get back to what you should be doing.
Yeah.
I would say I'm going to take a look at my phone. The podcast apps are incredible to me because, as a nomad, I'm always on planes or trains or in countries that, people might not speak the language. So I use Pocket Casts. It's my favorite one. It's like $3, but I've tried every single podcast app, and I think this is by far the best.
And are you on Apple?
Yeah, I'm on Apple, but I think it's Android too.
Cool. What's it called again? Sorry.
Pocket Casts.
Cool. Right.
Yeah. And aside from that, let me think. What else was on my phone here? I don't know, maybe WhatsApp, just because I'm always changing phone numbers, so it's all good.
It's a solid app. It's great.
Yeah. You have to have it. Honestly, you know what? Even if you guys don't use Facebook, when you travel, you have to have it, because don't be one of those people I know there's so many people now that refuse to use Facebook, but it really is the connector for people worldwide. So get back on it.
Would you say there's a form of elitism in the digital nomad scene where they really want to stay away from things like that, or is it just unavoidable? You have to use it.
I don't know. I think we just need to get over it. I actually did a talk somewhere. I recorded on my YouTube channel, so it's there. I think it's called Time Hacking Like a Boss, if you guys want to search for it. But basically, it's all my kind of travel hacks and productivity hacks. But one of the things I mentioned is use apps on your phone. Don't let it use you.
Right.
And one of the easiest ways is turn off all the notifications on your phone besides, maybe WhatsApp for friends, but even if you're in like a WhatsApp group, just mute it, and then if it's still showing like the numbers next to it, just move it to, the second or third screen. So you just don't look at it every day. Only, but at the same time, don't delete the app off your phone just to, so it doesn't bother you. Just turn everything off. Yeah. And that way, if you're out somewhere and you need to log into your email, you can. But at the same time, you're not getting new email notifications every 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most frustrating things when you're at dinner or a meal and someone's looking through their emails on their phone, but it comes part of it, I guess.
Yeah, but it's also stupid because when you use your phone, you consume media, you consume emails, but you can't really create on it.
Yeah.
As soon as people started using Facebook on their phones, the comments, started going way down. People might like posts.
Wow.
But those, they're scrolling through, they're not going to take the time to write a comment. And if they do, it's going to be short. It's probably going to be misspelled with bad grammar. But if they're on a laptop, they can write a thoughtful comment. They'll post something, with a paragraph, and it's the same with the emails. You know,
Yeah.
if you're at a laptop, you can really, you know, be thoughtful on how you reply versus just, you know, writing like one sentence ads. And it really makes a big difference in your life.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never thought about it like that. Do you have any advice to anyone that's wanting to start on this sort of journey that you've been down?
You know, I wish I could just tell people to do exactly what I did because it worked for me. You know, you know, I went from having, you know, a life that wasn't very fulfilling, you know, without much travel, without that much money in my bank account, to the exact opposite. You know, I feel very fulfilled now. I have a ton of money in the bank. I have a lot of travel experience, and you know, I'm much happier. But I don't think you guys can just follow my path. I think you can use it as, you know, something that could work for you, something that can inspire you or you can learn from. But I ultimately think everyone needs to kind of figure out their own, you know. So I wish I had like a solid answer. You know, I used to tell people like, you guys should just write a book, start a dropshipping store, sell the dropshipping store, get into investing, you know, and then, you know, start a podcast. And it could work, and it probably would work for a lot of people. But whether that's, you know, what they're passionate about and what will inspire them, you know, like it might not be. So, you know, you guys got to figure it out. But I would say, don't chase the shiny object. There's been a lot of, you know, businesses that I've seen, you know, come and go where I was excited to chase. And I'm so glad I just kind of stuck to the couple of things that, you know, that I did.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you know, those people might be long gone from now or broke, while like the businesses I started and the path that I took, you know, it was kind of a long, I would say like a longer shot. But if you're consistent with one thing, you'll make it work.
Yeah.
You know, you can't, there's no such thing as waking up, you know, and having an overnight success. Like, give yourself 2 months to do whatever it is.
Yeah, that's great advice. I usually ask some questions for new guests on the show. These are the last 4 questions. So, favorite book that you've read recently or of all time?
I mean, I guess 4 Work Week is the Bible, right?
Yeah.
But and you know, Shantaram it's a good travel book about an Indian Australian guy who went to India. And then I don't know. I mean, if you guys are interested in the Nomad scene, to be you know, 4 Work Week, and then you can read Life Changes Quick as kind of a follow up.
Yeah, that's cool. And your book, of course.
Yeah.
Favorite album that you've listened to of all time?
You know, it's hard to say. I don't have any favorite albums, but when I work, I listen to trap,
right?
Which is like hip hop, EDM. I don't know why. It pumps me up and gets me focused.
It's like the music version of Adderall.
Yeah. It feels like it.
Okay, and a favorite movie?
That's hard to say too. But most recently, it's Crazy Rich Asians.
Right. Oh yeah, I've heard about this.
You should go watch it.
I've heard it's got like amazing reviews.
Yeah, people really like it, and I think it's also really special as an Asian American, because it's like the first movie in like 20 years that has, you know, either, I think it's all Asian cast, but it's like not a kung fu movie about like Asian people. It's just like a normal movie.
Yeah.
You know that no matter what your race is, that you'll like.
Yeah.
But I took my parents to see it, and it was something special because, you know, they haven't been in the theaters in like 10 years.
Wow.
You know, so to show them something that, you know, they can kind of relate to too. They're like, it was really nice spending time with them.
Wow, that seems like really cool. Did they enjoy it as well?
They loved it.
Right.
Like it was funny because there's a lot of kind of like, I mean, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of like musical breaks in it, and like a great soundtrack, and they started singing along every time music played. And at first I wanted to stop them because it's, you know, it's, you're not supposed to do, you know, not really, it's not normal to do at a movie theater.
Yeah.
But it was like a Tuesday at 11 a.m. and there was like nobody in the theater. So I was like, oh yeah, like go ahead. And I looked over and they were just enjoying themselves so much. And I was like, you know what? Why not? Like, let them enjoy themselves,
And is that when you started singing as well?
I mean, I didn't know the words of Chinese, but yeah. But I would say that's another huge benefit of being a digital nomad, is having that time freedom to be able to go to the movie theater with your parents at 11:30 on a Tuesday, and not deal with the crowds. I mean, it was half the price as well. I mean, like, I didn't even know that. I assumed it would be like $15 for a ticket.
Right.
But life is just so much better when you have freedom.
It's that type of moments that make it all better.
Yeah.
Last question. Favorite all-time quote?
Yeah. So actually, there's a quote on my arm that most people don't know. Like, it just looks like a bunch of text, but it's by Marianne Williamson, and the beginning of it is, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And if you guys Google it, it's pretty long, but it ends with, by us playing small, it doesn't benefit the world. By us shining kind of as bright as we can, we inspire others to do the same. And that's something I've always, tried to live my life.
It's going to be with you forever as well, because you've got it on your arm. So you can always see that. Anyway, Johnny, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on. Is there anything you want to plug before we wrap up?
No, I mean, just, read the books if you guys want to know more and follow the journey, johnnyfd.com. Subscribe to the podcast, Travel Like a Boss podcast. I interview other successful nomads all the time. So it's probably the easiest way to figure out what the best business model is for you. Well, what you guys be passionate about, what you guys would do. And if you guys want to hang out in person, meet some other nomads, come out to Thailand, January 19th, 2019, nomadsummit.com.
That's it. Sounds awesome, man. And thank you again. It's been a great episode.
Yeah, it was fun talking. I'm going to head to the night market. So
I'm going to get some lunch. Catch you later, man.